Hello everyone, I'm Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Laura,
And we're the Sufficient Seven.
and today we are going to be reviewing the book Uprooted by Naomi Novik. We've got the American cover here. This book is a fantasy novel. I guess you could classify it as YA because the girl is 17. I feel like it seems a little bit more adult in terms of the way it's written. And it's about a girl named Agnieszka who lives in this town called Dvernik in this country of Poland. And I believe you said it's kind of based on Poland, or there are like some Polish folk elements mixed into the story. A little blurb on the back basically says that in this town there's this tower far away and this wizard lives there called the Dragon, and every 10 years he chooses a girl that he takes away with him for 10 years. And then she may come back to the village in between a week or a month, but then she always leaves. So there's always this looming fear of who's the dragon going to take. And Agnieszka and her friend Kasia were both born in the time span of what they call the dragon year. And so their entire lives they think that Kasia is going to be chosen to be taken by the dragon. And actually it's Agnieszka. And she finds out when she gets there it's because she has magic and she's a witch, and that's what the dragon does for 10 years. He's training new witches from the town of Dvernik. And what the back of the book or the inside cover doesn't really talk about is the fact that there's this malevolent force in the woods where they live nearby. So I feel like this book isn't as much about Agnieszka's training as it is about the battle with the wood. So the reason why she's being trained almost is to combat the evil force in the woods.
Overall, I really liked Uprooted. Out of 10 stars, I would give it a 7-star rating. I really like the way that Naomi Novik writes. I think it's really beautiful.
I liked when she was talking about the differences in magic styles, I believe. As she said, living things don't always stay where you put them, which was interesting because I think it creates that emphasis on magic isn't necessarily structured and rigid. It's a living thing just like everything else, and you can't control it. We talked about how there's this element of magic in the book, and it's really interesting the way that Naomi Novik describes the magic in this novel, because Agnieszka's magic, you'll find out, is very different from the dragon's. His is very structured and there's a lot of lessons and it's very rigid, and the way that he practices magic is very by the book. She has a much more intuitive sense for magic, and I think we both liked the way it was described because it seemed like it was not a force outside of herself. It was another sense that she could feel and control. And do you want to talk about like how she describes the use of magic and nature
it's kind of
metaphors?
It's basically through nature metaphors. Like when she first casts the summoning, she describes it as if she's like walking through a forest and having to like find her way, I don't know, between trees and plants and whatnot. And it seems like she's like stumbling through like a forest, and then eventually she just gets to this point where she like knows where she's going, and it's like a weaving through of like the different elements of like a forest. Or later on she uses the metaphor of a sandcastle, which is interesting. But it works, and it's cool because I feel like if I understand the way she's using magic, where a lot of other books you read it's just kind of like this person does magic, like they cast a spell, but it's kind of like how, and like in this book Naomi Novik really describes how Agnieszka can go about doing that.
It really feels like when you're reading the book you could almost see it, like if magic had a color or something you could tell what she was doing with it, how her magic works with other people's magics, how they work together. And I just thought it was a very interesting way of portraying the use of magic, because not a lot of people describe it with that much detail and use it as a force that's so ingrained in who she is.
I also think it's cool that she uses it differently from the way the dragon does, from the way like other wizards you meet in the book use it. And it's just kind of like you're taught like people think in different ways. It's being able to see that like people don't use magic in the same way. Like you think in a different way, and so you use magic in a different way, and I think that's really cool. So we both really like quotes. I've been like collecting quotes since high school. I have my own quote book. So every book I'm going to try and read some of my favorite quotes or some of our favorite quotes from it. I had a feeling the summoning wasn't really meant to be cast alone, as if truth didn't mean anything without someone to share it with. You could shout truth into the air forever and spend your life doing it if someone didn't come and listen.
I like that one too.
Yeah. This last one's a little sad. It's Agnieszka after like the very, very end of the book. We're meant to go, we're not meant to stay forever. And it's kind of sad, but I feel like it goes along with the whole theme of being uprooted and like where your roots lay. I know like a lot of the wizards in here talk about like stopping themselves from caring about other people because eventually everyone just dies and like you're left. And I don't know if wizards are immortal, that's never explained. They definitely live for a very long time. And so eventually you're gonna have to live without them. And so like she says, we're meant to go, we're not meant to stay forever, and I feel like that goes for wizards as well, because eventually, like, if you're just not caring about anything, like, I don't know, what are you doing?
Yeah, not doing anything with your life.
Yeah.
I think that's all we can say in terms of a general description. It was written very well, I think, and I really enjoyed the story. The reason why we decided to give it 7 stars instead of 10 was because there were a few problems that we found. The plot was a little odd in terms of pacing. I liked where the plot eventually went.
It felt off, like, the beginnings of a lot of books are usually, like, a little slower because you have to, like, build the world, but I don't know.
It almost got halfway through the book when she was with the dragon learning magic, and then all of a sudden the plot changed.
Yeah, it felt really abrupt.
Yes, and then there were new obstacles, and they kept facing these obstacles, and it went by really quickly. And I think it might have worked better if it were a duology. That said, I really liked it as a standalone. I think if it were 2 books instead of 1, another one of the issues of character development might have been fixed. Almost all of the characters in the book I liked, but they were a little static and there was not much character development throughout. Like, for example, like Agnieszka talks about how horrible it is to leave the village and leave her family, but then when she's with the dragon, she barely ever thinks of her family at all. And she has, I believe, 3 or 4 older brothers.
Yeah.
And it was just odd because at the beginning of the book, she kept talking about how horrible it was to be away from the village, but it just seemed like there was not enough development with her relationship with her friend Kasha, with her family, and some of the other characters as well.
So yeah, that's it for us talking about the book with no spoilers. So if you haven't read it, I recommend reading it. We did like it overall. It's definitely worth the read. So go pick it up, read it, and come back when you are ready to hear our spoilery discussion of it. Bye.
Bye!
I can't tell.